So our panel is titled Addressing Disparities in Appalachian Ohio's African American Community. And as Dr. Maroney mentioned, my name is Lori Bergeshausen. I work for the Foundation for Appalachian Ohio on the development team. I live in the town of Nelsonville, and in my free time, I enjoy experiencing all Southeast Ohio has to offer: hiking, fishing, kayaking, and photographing its beauty. Ernie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Ernie Bynum. I'm the co-founder of the African American Community Fund. I'm a 10th generation Appalachian, retired out of the United States Air Force. I'm an entrepreneur and a philanthropist.
So on today's panel, Ernie and I will examine the history of organized philanthropy, the current philanthropic gap within the 32 counties of Appalachian Ohio, and the fundamental impediment the region has to removing barriers and creating opportunities for the region's citizens, including the population identifying as African American. This panel will also discuss Ernie's personal journey in co-founding the African American Community Fund in January of 2020 in partnership with the Foundation for Appalachian Ohio. So I just wanted to go over some brief history of organized philanthropy so we have a little bit more of a background on what this project is doing today. So according to the National Philanthropic Trust, modern philanthropy has its roots in ancient Greece. The Greek word philanthropia translates to a love for humankind. Prior to modernity, philanthropic practices were intertwined in societal structures and beliefs. The ancient Greeks believed philanthropia was essential to a thriving democracy. Similar tenets of reciprocity and kindness, or balance and harmony, can be found in ancient sub-Saharan civilizations, Native American tribes, and in the sacred texts of Judaism and Christianity. With the shift into modernity in the 15th and 16th centuries, the world saw massive restructuring economically, politically, and socially. Rural feudalism ceased to exist, altering the economic structure of the period. The Reformation undid much of Catholicism's institutional power, and the Age of Discovery led to a global expanse and takeover of lands for the Western world. These historical events greatly influenced what is modern philanthropy. Need became centralized in urban areas, and a move from religious orders providing aid to that of state welfare, as well as a more global exchange of ideas. As we progress, revolutions and modern industrialization led to workers questioning the quality of life in urban centers. Private philanthropic efforts and a push for greater public responsibility for those suffering in turmoil began to emerge. In the late 1800s, Andrew Carnegie called in the Gospel of Wealth for millionaires to redistribute their money for public good. This led to the creation of many national philanthropic foundations investing in public health, education, arts and culture, and science. Many of these foundations still exist today. In the 20th century, however, there was a move from this national philanthropic model to a more local-based approach through what became known as community foundations. In order to increase the efficacy of the Cleveland Trust Company, the president, Mr. Goff, established the world's first community foundation. Mr. Goff managed several small charitable trusts. However, he often struggled to identify recipients of awards for those trusts. In order to mitigate this problem, Mr. Goff consolidated the trusts into one organization, which could exist into perpetuity. The bank would focus on investing, a board would govern, and the foundation would assess the needs of the community and make grants to organizations that meet those needs. This is how the Cleveland Foundation was born. The Cleveland Foundation's endowment is currently over $2.5 billion, allowing for over $90 million to be given annually. The Community Foundation model was not only successful for Mr. Goff, it has also allowed for people of modest wealth to combine with others to promote philanthropic initiatives. As noted by the Community Foundation of Northeast Alabama, community foundations are tax-exempt public charities serving thousands of people who share a common concern for improving the quality of life in their area. Individuals, families, businesses, and organizations create permanent charitable funds that help their region meet the challenges of changing times. The foundation invests and administers these funds. Generally, now in the United States and globally, philanthropy refers to the formal practice of grant making by foundations to nonprofit or public entities. Now, what I have just outlined is not an extensive history of philanthropy. However, it is the most common narrative that exists when discussing the trajectory of philanthropic organizations in the United States. However, this narrative fails to address the struggles of rural areas, such as Appalachia, have in accumulating philanthropic resources similar to their urban counterparts. Appalachian Ohio lost their wealth as quickly as it came. Extractive industries such as coal, steel, and/or lumber have carted away much of the region's resources and wealth to companies that do not call Appalachia home. Not only have extractive resources left, but people have as well. People seeking jobs in the urban centers that do not exist in the rural countryside or currently cannot due to the digital divide. Partly as a result, the region has historically received less philanthropic attention than other areas of the state of Ohio. Charitable donations and giving will not transform an entire economy, but it will aid in the retention of wealth to the region through institutional infrastructures. The Foundation for Appalachian Ohio, also known as FAO, which was only established in 1998, is working to ensure the region has long-term financial capacity and community leadership to thrive. As mentioned earlier, Ohio has the oldest community foundation, the Cleveland Foundation. It also has a number of the most established and best endowed community foundations in the country. The Columbus Foundation has over $2 billion in assets. These foundations empower community leaders to make decisions about local needs and priorities year after year in a consistent and sustained way. Appalachian Ohio has not had that opportunity. The 32 counties of Appalachian Ohio have 90% less philanthropic dollars than the rest of Ohio. Almost every county in Ohio has a community foundation, except those in the Appalachian region. The Foundation for Appalachian Ohio has been working to incubate community foundations throughout Appalachian Ohio to grow the philanthropic capacity of the region. FAO's first pilot community foundation was in Guernsey County. They have no dedicated staff outside of FAO as an umbrella organization, but with strong volunteer leadership, they have assembled almost $10 million. The Guernsey County Foundation directs approximately $250,000 back into the county annually. It's not a large county, so when that type of money is given locally year after year, you can see a huge difference. Citizens are now accessing educational and health opportunities that were not there before, and it is providing local capacity to respond to major issues such as the opioid epidemic. Not only has Appalachian Ohio and other rural regions in the U.S. struggled to build philanthropic capacities, but so have communities of color. Communities of color have also failed to gain philanthropic capital due to the United States' tumultuous history of slavery, oppression, and segregation. Ernie will further discuss the history of Black philanthropy and the challenges African Americans have faced in resource accumulation.
Yes, thank you. Yes, the African American population has really helped shape the Appalachian region in Ohio. You know, with the Underground Railroad, the tonalities and the music, the churches have filled spaces to lead their communities. But in order to understand the African American journey in philanthropy, we must go back to the beginning of the creation of the country. In the beginning, in the writing of the Constitution, African Americans were deemed less than human. We were 3/5 of a human being. And this led to many problems. These problems still exist to this day. In the beginning, even during slavery, African Americans have always been philanthropic. We've given of our time, our talents, and our treasures for our very survival, just to ensure that the next generation would have a better quality of life. African American philanthropy has always been conducted behind the scenes, unnoticed, unrecognized, because we thought that was what we were supposed to do. That is how we were raised, to be able to help anybody improve the quality of their life. Most of the African American philanthropy has been done through our churches, even though this was met with tremendous backlash, destruction of property, even death. So we did it in secrecy, in privacy, out of the light of the general population. So we didn't get to experience organized philanthropy because we were excluded. But however, it did not stop our marches progressing forward. One of the greatest social justice movements in this country was the civil rights movement. And the civil rights movement could not have happened without communities of all different races coming together, sharing their time, their talents, and their treasures, just to make sure that we can move America forward. Even today, African American philanthropy goes unnoticed. And the reason that it goes unnoticed today is the fact that we have always been in a condition that we must identify and address our immediate needs just for our very survival. And in that state of survival, we haven't been able to think or build resources for long-term sustainability that can grow our nonprofit organizations, that can enhance the entire, because as we strengthen the African American population in the 32 county regions in Ohio, if we strengthen the African American communities, we not only strengthen them, but we strengthen the entire communities, because the more that we can do together, the better off we'll all be. You can go ahead, Lori.
Of course. So as Ernie mentioned, Black donors often give some of the highest percentages of their income to philanthropic causes compared to other racial groups, but they're not often thought of as the conventional face of philanthropy. According to a 2015 diversity in giving study produced by Blackbaud, 48% of African American donors reported earning less than $50,000 a year. Half of the group studied says they donate to their place of worship more than any other nonprofit category. In addition, 75% of these donors say giving to their place of worship is important, far more than any other donor group. African American donors say they give an average of 13% of their income to their place of worship compared to 9% of donors overall. The idea of philanthropy and an endowment is still new to the African American community and goes against their historic ways of giving. In the past and even to the present day, as Ernie mentioned, African Americans have been addressing their immediate needs, and this often doesn't lead to a position of self-sufficiency. I would like to pass it over to Ernie now to talk more about what led him to work on creating an African American community fund.
Well, as we journeyed along, back in 1998, we established the Minority Business Resource Network, which is a nonprofit agency, and we started to see the barriers that exist for minorities. And we saw that even today, intentionally or unintentionally, being excluded meant that we had to build resources that would be here long after we were gone. But at that time, we didn't know that. So we embraced the Muskingum County Community Foundation, and we continued to learn through our successes and through our failures. And as we continued to learn, we recognized that there was a problem. There was a lack of education and organized philanthropy in Appalachian, Ohio, Black and white. So thank God for the foundation of Appalachian, Ohio. As they came along and tied our region together, we were able to learn that by common people, ordinary people, donate and join their resources together in a vehicle that would be here in perpetuity, that we could start to build our organizations and take ourselves out of that survivability mode into a mode where we would have sustainability, where we'd be able to go into each of the 32 communities the counties in Appalachian, Ohio, and educate the churches, educate nonprofits where they could get engaged and do this also, and hopefully do it better than us. So it brought us together as a family. And some of the things that brought me here was my dad's experience. He was born in 1938. He was one of the first African-American firemen at Zanesville, Ohio. And when he first started working, he had to sleep in the hall. He couldn't sleep in the bays with the white firemen because they were still segregated. But through his long journey, he was never angry. He was never bitter, but he always looked for ways to remove these barriers. And as we shared time together over the many, many years, we realized that we must engage this process. And it led us to the point where we're like, okay, this is tremendous. We can help. We can show our love for humankind. And that's what led us to the creation of the African American Community Fund, so that we could build resources and really prop up organizations, churches, individuals, families, that we could make a better Appalachia.
Wonderful. So you'll see on the screen the vision and mission of the African American Community Fund. And this was one of the first tasks that the committee came to creating. So I would love it, Ernie, if you could just further elaborate on the vision of the African American Community Fund.
Well, the Appalachian Community Fund was established at the foundation of Appalachian, Ohio in January of 2020. And we were committed to gathering resources that would be sustainable for generations to come. The African American Community Fund, it gave us the opportunity to exist in a space where we would be able, after we're gone, long after we're gone, people would be able to step into this vehicle and continue to move it forward. And we knew it would improve the physical structure of communities, the conditions that affect the quality of life. And working with the foundation of Appalachian, Ohio has been a dream come true.
Wonderful. So I would like to play a video now discussing a little bit more about the African American Community Fund, so we can get a broader picture of what that vision is.
My name is Ernest Bynum. I'm from Muskingum County, and I'm the co-founder of the African American Community Fund, along with my father, Ernest Bynum. We found a lot of barriers that existed for minorities. A lot of the Black-led organizations were operating out of a survivability mode, and we need that support philanthropically to take us from that survivability mode into the sustainability mode, so we can make a greater impact on each and every community that we serve in. In Southeastern Ohio, we're like one big family. The more members in the family that can be strengthened, the better off we'll all be. Economically, I see us raising $10 million within the next 5 years for this fund, but the knowledge and the networking that people are going to bring us closer together is going to be very important to me, because you can't lead where you won't go, and you don't teach what you don't know.
So I wanted to discuss a little bit more about the journey in establishing the fund. So when creating this fund at FAO, we knew that we didn't need to reinvent the wheel. Although African American community funds are still small nationally and non-existent in many rural areas, there were community foundations that had already begun this work. So we decided that one of the first tasks would be to reach out to these organizations and ask for advice. We met with representatives of the Dayton Foundation's African American Community Fund. Their fund houses more than 190 current and deferred funds benefiting a variety of important areas, including civic, economic, cultural, educational, religious, and human service initiatives. In addition, the Dayton Foundation's African American Community Fund has contributed more than $6 million to nonprofit organizations providing services within the community. Our second meeting was with the Community Foundation of Lorain County's African American Community Fund, who has over $22,000 invested in student scholarships and has granted over $326,000 back into their community. In these two meetings, we learned a variety of lessons, many which were similar to what FAO has learned in establishing other community funds. However, they are notable. These lessons echoed the importance of having the right people on the fund steering committee. The first few years are crucial to not only building endowment, but also gaining awareness in the communities that the fund exists. Throughout this process, we knew that we needed to find folks with a passion for Appalachian, Ohio, who were willing to grow and build the African American Community Fund together. Responsibilities of the committee members included contributing personal time and talents to advance the African American Community Fund's mission, supporting fundraising efforts, guiding the African American Community Fund's strategic direction, including grant making, and serving as a representative to the public. Currently, the African American Community Fund Steering Committee includes Ernest E. Bynum, who for over 30 years worked for the Zanesville Fire Department, Ernest A. Bynum, who is presenting with me today, who co-founded the Minority Business Resource Network in Muskingum County, Ralph Smithers Jr., the Assistant Vice President of Diversity and Community Relations for Encova Insurance, who has ancestral ties to Renville, Ohio, Ken Mason, who held a long career as an executive with CSX Railroad and retired as the Vice President of Labor Relations. His family is no stranger to the Appalachian region. His family history on both sides has lived here since the 1800s. Ken currently lives in Harrison County, Ohio. Dr. Michelle Reynolds, a Jefferson County native who was appointed by Governor Mike DeWine as the director of the Governor's Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. Now, we also met with another group known as the Poise Foundation, who Ernie is going to tell you more about them and the lessons that we took from them as well.
Yes, thank you. Yes, the Poise Foundation, I've been in contact with them over the years, and we've reached out to them. The Poise Foundation is one of the only, there's only 2 or 3, maybe, African-American led community foundations in America. And they were very instrumental in setting up the grant making guidelines that we have. And we had the guidelines that the organizations that would receive funding would be led by an African-American executive director, or the board of directors would be 50% African-American and serve the population. We had the Poise Foundation, theirs were the 75% of the community had to be served by African-Americans. And that didn't work in the Appalachian region. So that's when we adjusted it to just serve the African-American community. So you can meet 2 out of the 3 of those criteria and still receive awards for grant funding. So the initiative that we started, it doesn't exclude anybody by organizational structure. You just have to fit into 2 of the 3 of those categories, which is fantastic. And I really commend those gentlemen that started it and ladies that started this long ago, 40 years for the Poise Foundation, but their leadership has been very instrumental in our guidance going forward.
And one thing that was really exciting about the Poise Foundation and this criteria was it really has the opportunity to uplift Black leaders who are engaging in nonprofit work who otherwise might not be recognized for what they're doing for their community. And once we had this grant making criteria, we were very excited to start making grant awards. However, the African American Community Fund is still very new, and it hasn't had the opportunity to grow their endowment to a point where they would be able to grant out on their own. And this is where we had the opportunity to, as the Foundation for Appalachian, Ohio, to partner with the African American Community Fund. The African American Community Fund awarded $10,000 in grant awards through a partnership, as I mentioned, with FAO's I'm a Child of Appalachia Fund. These grant awards supported 6 Black-led organizations amid the ongoing COVID-19 crisis, which, as we know, has disproportionately impacted Black communities. The first grant award went to the Alliance for Congregational Transformation in Our Neighborhoods, or ACTION. They received funding to combat food insecurity in Mahoning County by providing fresh and organic food from local farmers in the Youngstown area through a pop-up market model. And the photo that we have in front of us is from the Carver Community Center, who received funding to assist Ross County. Ooh, it seems like it's going on its own. Received funding to assist Ross County students and families as they face the challenges of remote learning. With parents and other family caregivers often working during the school day, the center provides childcare, supports the children in their online work, and provides them with meals. The next grant went to the Go Community Development Corporation. They received funding to stock a shoe and coat closet, providing Ashtabula County children with needed clothing for the winter season. The John Gee Black Historical Center in Gallia County received funding to provide virtual programming while increasing the reach of their organization beyond Gallia County. In particular, this online programming will allow them to still reach visitors throughout the COVID-19 pandemic when they would not otherwise be able to have visitors to their space. The Underground Railroad Museum received funding to conduct extensive research and create a virtual map of the Underground Railroad stations in Belmont County. This virtual platform will allow the museum to reach patrons who cannot attend in-person tours. And lastly, we have the United Returning Citizens. They receive funding to create baskets of essential items such as face masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer to help reduce the spread of COVID-19 among those released from prison, including those released early due to COVID transmission. Due to COVID transmissions. The baskets also helped working or incarcerated individuals and other vulnerable populations in Mahoning County. Ernie, would you like to talk more about what the future vision is for the African American Community Fund?
Yes, the future vision is dynamic. We really look on collecting and gathering a lot of resources together and going out into each county where resources are distributed and educate the community about philanthropy. And what we really want to achieve is not one vehicle that takes over the Appalachian region, but each community can establish under the African American Community Fund or individually can establish their own fund, whether it be a donor advised fund, organizational fund, where they can learn that they can put their resources together locally and can benefit their direct mission. So we want to educate. We want to go out and teach about grant writing, board of directors development. We want to give the whole capacity building so that individual communities can step up and take initiatives for themselves along with working with the African American Community Fund. We want to be here as a liaison from the locals to the state. We just want to be here to really create a solid foundation underneath our region so that we can make a difference and leave an impact for generations to come.
So the question comes down to, could this be a potential model for other rural communities? And although the answer is not as simply as yes or no, we have learned lessons that we believe can be valuable to others. Throughout this presentation, we mentioned this regional approach. And various counties in Appalachian, Ohio do not have large populations of communities of color. According to American Community Survey data, throughout Appalachian, Ohio's 32-county range, the median population of those who identify as Black or African American is 2.6%. In one county, the population is small as 0.1%, and in the highest county, it's 15.1%. By focusing on a regional approach, the African American Community Fund will be able to create a larger network of Black Appalachians working together, as well as the ability to provide funding to more Black-led nonprofits as the endowment grows. An African American community fund would not be able to pull together enough resources in a county with a population as small as 0.1% or even 0.5%. Another lesson that we learned is the importance of knowing where the Black-led organizations are. In the inaugural grant round, there was an initial concern that no one would know the fund existed or the press releases would not be read by organizations that would meet the criteria. FAO reached out to various nonprofit and governmental entities to see if a list of Black-led or serving organizations existed for Appalachian, Ohio. And although we tried, it seemed a list did not exist. So we got into action. We reached out to the community funds that work with FAO to see what people in the local community knew, and we emailed every county library in the 32-county region asking for connections to various nonprofits. Through this effort, we were able to create a working list of Black-led nonprofits in Appalachian, Ohio. Not only will this working document expand as time continues, it will also allow for more connections to be made with Black leaders throughout the region. As Ernie mentioned earlier, the African American Community Fund wants to lead workshops and other capacity building trainings for Black local leaders. There is a hope that through this organic relationship building, a Black Appalachian delegation will be able to come together to discuss needs in their community, potential solutions, and of course, celebrate one another in the work they are doing for the region. By combining a larger regional approach, there is a greater opportunity for Black leaders to get to know one another and to learn from one another. Black history. Appalachian, Ohio has a rich history. However, often communities in the region are not aware of how vital the Black population was to that history. The African American Community Fund will be able to highlight Black historical figures and events. For instance, Renville, Ohio was home to the first integrated village in 1879. Isaiah Tuppence, the first mayor of Renville, was African American. He also was the first African American man to earn his medical degree in Ohio at the Columbus Medical College, which is now known as the Ohio State University. Black history is history, but since it's left out of mainstream textbooks and education, many are not aware of the impact African Americans have had in rural Appalachian, Ohio. Although it should not be the responsibility of Black people to educate others, the Community Fund is excited about celebrating the impact Black Appalachians have had in the region. Listening to needs. By creating the African American Community Fund, there is a group that is able to listen to the needs of the African American population throughout the region. There is also the ability for the fund to either provide funding through a grant award to an organization already working on a solution, or to connect that organization to others within the network who may have an answer. Through growing the African American Community Fund's endowment, there is the ability to create resources for the Black community in Appalachian, Ohio for generations to come. There is strength in being able to have resources available for when the community needs it. For far too long, as Ernie mentioned, the Black population has lacked intergenerational wealth. Is this a prescriptive model? No. However, the lessons the African American Community Fund has learned could be beneficial to those attempting to start a similar fund. The African American Community Fund has learned it is important to look at demographics of the county and region before deciding on our approach, to reach out to those with local knowledge of organizations, to create a network if one doesn't exist, because if the fund waited, it might have never came, to listen to community needs, and to build resources for the future. The African American Community Fund is learning as it goes. However, it is time that African Americans are finally recognized for being philanthropic, because it has frankly been too long. It is also the time they start to reap the benefits of organized philanthropy. I would like to pass this over to Ernie to close us out.
Well, thank you. And what I would like to say is that we have came so far in Appalachian and in America. Yet we've got so much farther to go. But working together, combining resources, sharing times and talents, we can still move this country forward in a direction that will lead prosperity for generations to come. I know that we have differences. I know that we have issues that must be combined. And through this fund, it also gives us an opportunity to talk to one another, to communicate. And what we'll realize when we do this is that we all pretty much want the same things. We all want safe neighborhoods, good schools, vast opportunities for our children to stay at home if they choose instead of leaving the region. But I would like for everybody just to go to the Foundation of Appalachian, Ohio, check out the African American Community Fund. Any gift that's given, no matter what size, it goes and makes an immediate impact and it'll last for generations. And I would just like to say thank you for this opportunity to be before you today, and God bless you all.
Wow, I'm blown away by the work that you've done and how the fund that you've put together. And I do have a few questions if you wouldn't mind. One of the questions is still I'm still a little unclear on the relationship between the fund and the foundation.
Okay.
And if can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, with the foundation being a community entity. Okay, they're set up there to receive people coming in with visions about endowments. So we came to the foundation with a concept about establishing this endowment to provide permanent resources for the African American community. And so we've established an endowment fund inside of the community foundation. And the community foundation manages the investment. They help conduct our monthly steering committee meetings. They act as a liaison of grant opportunities that are out there already that we can participate in. And like Lori said, the foundation was instrumental, especially Lori was instrumental in reaching out to the libraries throughout. I mean, the foundation just gives you that professional support, whether it be grant writing, financial. They support you in that manner. You bring your fund to them, and then you grow together.
Yeah, I can add on to that. So as Ernie mentioned, we're just an umbrella organization with the Foundation for Appalachian, Ohio. We work on managing the investment of the fund. That way, since we already have an established network with our investors, there's no worry about making sure that the investing that's happening is safe and responsible. We're also able to provide support where needed. So we're not driving the ship. That's all Ernie and the rest of the steering committee members who are making decisions and deciding what's going to occur in the local community. We're just there to provide back office support.
I actually think the Appalachian Studies Association is affiliating with FAO to manage our endowment as well. That's a decision we made last year, I think. So I also was curious. Congratulations on getting your first grants out the door. I was curious if you had specific topics or issues that you were prioritizing, like environmental, food. Are you thinking along those lines as well?
Well, and that's the great thing about this is the issues that exist, say before COVID. Okay, in the African American community, we knew there was disparities in medicine. We knew there was disparity in educational resources as far as scholarships being, given to and applied, the African American community applying for resources in that manner. The COVID exposed things where the African American community, we have a good heartbeat about what our community needs are. So as we go along, whatever that community needs is what will be addressed, because by community, there may be a little different priority in the needs. The needs are going to be very similar, but one community may want to address educational more than medical. One community may want to address the food desert areas more so than another. So whatever the community needs, we have the flexibility to morph into that environment to address their needs.
Yeah, I think that makes really good sense. I do have another question, but I want to encourage anybody who's in the session, if you have a question you'd like to ask live, to just put your hand up, or you can make a question or comment in the chat. My other thing I was thinking about while you were talking is, how you were describing how difficult it was to identify potential grantees, right? So where's that list now? What have you done with that?
That list currently exists on my desktop, and I have sent it to one of the state of Ohio government liaisons for the region, so they have access to it. But since it's a working document, I'm just going to keep sending updates for when we get them. But yeah, it was a really interesting experience, just because this year there's been a lot of focus on Black-led organizations. However, when I reached out to a lot of governmental entities or universities, they didn't have a list, and they were like, "That's a really good idea. We should get that started because we really want to uplift those organizations." And I personally was just kind of shocked, because I thought, this is something that obviously existed and I could just, take it and use it and we could work on it. But we really had to start from ground zero and reach out to the local communities and figure out, where are these organizations and how can we provide them support? And as I mentioned earlier when discussing demographics, there are some counties that do have more dense African American or Black populations than others. So in those counties, it was somewhat easier to find a more extensive list. But in terms of counties like Belmont, it was really just reaching out to the local librarian and reaching out to folks that we knew lived in the region, and asking them, "Hey, what organizations are in your county?" And the response was great. We were able to get names of those organizations, and when we called them, they were able to give us names of others. So it really was an experience of more of a grassroots approach than being able to just take from what an institution has already created.
And then with the projects you've already funded, I imagine that you'll be promoting the successes of those too, and that will likely help maybe expand that list. Is that? Yeah.
Yes, that is definitely a goal that we have. And even myself, I've learned so much just from those organizations. For instance, the Carver Community Center in Ross County, they were established on the offshoot of a church during the time of segregation to be a Black haven for the community. So that is a historical example of, as Ernie mentioned, the Black community coming together and really working for those immediate needs. So we're just happy as an organization, if I can say this on behalf of the African American Community Fund, to really continue that momentum and provide sustainability over survivability.
I'd like to invite anyone else in the session, if you have comments or questions, or maybe you have a similar experiences to share with funds that you've organized. We'd welcome anything, any of your input if you have some.
But I just like to coattail on what Lori said. One of the things that we'll find is that the problems that exist in the African American community, they exist. Let's just use the entire Appalachian region, not just Ohio, but the Appalachian region. I can say with a surety that the lack of a list, a documented list of African American organizations, exists everywhere in the Appalachian region. It does. So this has been a tremendous grassroots, where once we get a list composed, then we can network better. But this problem exists in all of Appalachia, throughout America, actually.
Thank you, Ernie. We do have a question from Chris Green. Chris, you can open your mic and ask your question.
Hi, this is amazing and wonderful to hear about this true grassroots effort led to bring together people who have been working on this, both on the grassroots level and on the level of understanding that has already been established too about philanthropy. What I'm curious about is, what has been the response of the organizations to who the grants are going to? And I ask because working with many grant givers and people who receive grants, people feel affirmed and they feel like they're in connection with others by virtue of this. I'm very curious about what the response of the organizations that you all have been given to, or even who have applied, have been.
Yeah, I think one thing that we forgot to mention in our presentation was we were very intentional in the grant making process. Ernie came to me and said, you know, a lot of Black organizations often don't have experience with writing grants. So we wanted to make sure that we created a really simple process and that the committee didn't throw out an application just because, you know, the grammar was off or they didn't have the statistical information that a traditional nonprofit might have. So I think when it came from the response of nonprofits when we were reaching out, some were very excited about the opportunity and felt noticed. I reached out to all of these organizations on the phone because I wanted to speak with them and let them know, hey, we have this grant opportunity and you should apply. And when you reach out one-to-one to an organization instead of just sending an email about the opportunity, oftentimes they feel like, okay, they want me to apply. I think I'm going to. I think I have a chance. And we've also had opportunities where those who weren't able to receive funding from the grant round, FAO was able to put them on their new crowdfunding website, causeconnector.org, as an opportunity to continue raising funds for the organizations that weren't able to get funding through that initial grant round. Because we wanted to make sure that throughout this process, we're completely uplifting those organizations. But I do know that one of the organizations in particular called me after they had received notice, and they just kept thanking over and over and over again because that was only the second grant they had ever applied for in the entire existence of them working for the nonprofit. It was really a confidence boost. Another nonprofit, we were able to connect actually with the Voinovich School, who was going to help them learn more about grant writing. So we're just really trying to use FAO's connections as well to help those nonprofits as the African American Community Fund continues to grow. Ernie, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, thank you for your question, Chris. A lot of the feedback that I've been receiving from individuals who received the grants and that didn't receive the grants, they were just really, I guess it gave a lot of hope that as we build, that we're going to be here for a long time. So it's not a one-time gift and then they go back to can't receive the funding anymore, can't get the networking support anymore. So they're really glad that we're here. They're very interested in learning the process. They're very enthusiastic because for the first time, like Lori was stating, someone's reached out to them. And so it makes a big difference when it's African American led, strategically pinpointing the African American community.
I have a question, but I just want to make a note for those of you who aren't from Ohio that the Voinovich School is actually an academic unit at Ohio University. It's named after former governor and state senator George Voinovich. You were talking about grant writing, but what about grant accounting? So what kind of help do these organizations need to, evaluate their grants and report on the money that they're spending and that type of thing?
Well, and that goes along with the local example that I have here. My nonprofit received a grant for a project we're working on from one of the larger family funds, the Straker Family Fund. And they had called me in, we talked for a while, and they'd asked if I could set up basically a program that would give assistance to organizations in that very aspect, because they want to give out the funding, but they're not sure about the accountability process of it. And so that's one of the things that working with these organizations one-on-one, if they have any questions about the funding, how it's to be reported, the foundation and us also will make sure that they get the right detailed information of how to report it back so that they can participate in the future. So we don't want to set anyone up to fail. So just pick the phone up, give me a call, give Lori a call. And so it's so close one-on-one that we make sure that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, and FAO really believes in trust-based philanthropy and local-based philanthropy. And essentially that means the nonprofits know exactly what they need, and there needs to be some sort of trust that they're going to be able to use those funds in the best of their capacity. There are reporting mechanisms. We ask them to fill out a short form after they have used the grant funds, just to make sure that we're in line with IRS standards, and that those funds have gone to what the grant agreement has said they should go to. However, we have had cases where we've given out grant awards and a project has fallen through, or the rest of the funding didn't come from the other source where they believed it would. And really, when it comes to that case, we just have the nonprofit call us and we work something out, because I think at FAO, we really understand that that those things happen, and to pull funding away from an organization that is trying to do good in their community isn't the solution. So I hope that answers a little bit more about the reporting mechanisms. But as the African American Community Fund grows, they're able to adapt any sort of the reporting mechanisms that they see fit.
Yeah, I don't know how others feel, but it in a lot of ways, it's sometimes easier to get the grant than to spend the money and report back on what you've done, right? Yeah. Anybody else? Questions or comments? Wow, it's been a great session. I've learned so much, and now I'm going to carry the flag for the African American Community Fund and make sure everybody I know knows about it. So
Well, thank you.
really, I really appreciate you spending some time with us and presenting this session. It's a great model, I think, moving forward. So, and thank you all for attending. There are sessions still occurring until 11:45, and what I've said is, one of the benefits of this virtual conference is that you can go slip into the back door of another session right now, and the whole room's not going to turn around and look at you and wonder why you're so late. So you can feel free to do that. And we do have one more group of presentations starting at 10:30, and then the closing session is at 12:30. So thank you all for participating this morning.